Today, I'm going to be talking about variables in Scratch and then moving on to variables in Java. So, variables in Scratch are a little complicated, but they're not too hard to understand as long as we think about them as objects that represent either a number or a string of letters or something else. So, a variable represents something that you want to store. For example, let's say we're on the variables tab and we want to use my variable. What we can do is set the value, right? We can set my variable to, let's say, 100. And when we set it to 100, now my variable will store or represent 100. So if we say my variable for 2 seconds, my variable will be replaced by 100. And when I click that, it'll say 100. And then we can create a new variable, for example, timeSed, and then we can set timeSed to set its value. We can say it maybe is 5. When we click that, timeSed will now represent 5. And then we can use timeSed, and now it'll say it for timeSed is 5 for 5 seconds. So when we play it, when we click the block, let's say 100 for 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. So now what we can do is we can change the value of these two variables. So we can set my variable and to, I don't know, hello, and timeSed to 1. And now it'll say hello for 1 second. And when we set the variables and then click the purple block, I'll say hello for 1 second. Perfect. All right, that is variables in Scratch. Now, there are a couple of things we need to talk about before we get to variables in Java. So one of the ways we also talked about using variables in Scratch is user input, right? So when we go to sensing and we ask what is your name, and then you can access this answer. You can access the answer that the user gives with a variable called answer. So for example, you can say answer for 2 seconds. And when you click on this block of code, you enter your name. So my name is Sam, for example. It'll say Sam for 2 seconds because it says the answer for 2 seconds. All right, so how do you do that in Java? Well, in Java, there's something called a scanner. And what I've done here is I've imported all the stuff that has to do with scanner. So importing in Java is basically bringing in all the information about what you're trying to do so that the program can understand, okay, you're trying to scan stuff. And I'll explain what that means in a second. Then I created a scanner. So this scanner object is actually a variable, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Point is, it represents the computer scanning things. And then we're going to print the prompt, enter your name. And then we have this variable, username, or we can just rename it name to be simpler, right? And update it everywhere. And this name is also a variable. And then we set it using this single equals sign. We set the variable value to reading the next line that the scanner receives. So when we play this, when we run this code, and you enter your name, Sam, right? And it's waiting for a response because of this scanner object.next line thing. And when I enter that, it's going to receive Sam as the next line. And so name is going to be set to Sam. So name is going to represent Sam. And then therefore, it's going to say hi, comma, Sam, exclamation point. So when I press enter here, it'll say hi, Sam. All right, perfect. And then let's run it again. And let's print, let's say my name is Chris. It'll say hi, Chris. All right, so that's how you use variables in Java, but let's talk a little bit more about that. So why did I have to say it was a string? In Scratch, all I did was just set the variable to whatever I want. Well, in some languages, like Scratch and Python, they don't really care about the type that your variable is. But in Java, it cares whether your variable is a string or an int or something else. So there's a couple data types. There are ints, which are like whole numbers, floats, which are decimals, chars, which are single characters, booleans, true or false, and strings, which are strings like hello, strings of letters, in other words, strings of text. So in other words, Java demo, the name of this file is a string because it's a string of text. And also the name is a string because it's a string of characters. So let's say we wanted to receive an int instead. So let's say we wanted to know our age. And then we said happy birthday of that age. And it's not going to write like 8th, it's going to write happy 8th birthday, for example, but it's close enough. So instead of string, right, if you're something years old, that something is going to be an integer. It's going to be a whole number, right? So we want int. And then we're going to have to change this slightly, the scanner, what we're getting from the scanner, which I'll explain in future videos. But the point is you can actually change it to next int, and it'll return the next line as an integer. And then we can use that next line by printing it. And I'll show you what I mean. When I enter my age, I say, I don't know, maybe I'm 25, and I press enter, and it says happy 25 birthday. And I didn't put like a th, I could. For example, if I did that, right, and I put in 14, what's going to happen is it's going to set name to the next line, which is 14. So name is now an int in 14. And then I'm going to print name. So we can actually change this to age to make it less confusing. And now we're going to print age as part of this print statement, right? So age is going to be replaced by 14. It's going to say happy 14th birthday. But the cool thing about variables in Java, you can do this in Scratch too, but in Java, what you can do is manipulate them. So let's say I wanted to add 2 to age before saying happy that birthday. So I say age equals, well, what did we have before we had age, right? So what I'm going to do is say age equals age plus 2. And now let me explain the statement. When you say a variable on the left and a variable on the right, and they're the same variable, you might think, well, that's kind of circular, right? How can you define a variable based on itself? The thing is that Java treats this left one as a new variable almost, and then the right one as the old value. So in other words, it's setting the new value to be the old value plus 2. So when I type in 20, for example, the old value is going to be 20. It's going to add 2. And it's going to say, and then it's the new value is going to be 22. So it's going to say happy 22nd birthday. And we'll change it to ND in preparation. So when I play it, I'm going to say 20. It's going to add 2, and it's going to say happy 22nd birthday. You can also multiply. If I said times 3, for example, and then I ran it, and I put in 10, it's going to say happy 30th the birthday, and we can correct this. But the point is that you can input a value, store it as a variable of whatever type it is. So if it's an integer, whole number, then you'd store it as an int. If it's a string, you store it as a string, as we did earlier, a capital string. And if it's like a Boolean, you'd store it as a Boolean, for example, and so on. And then you can manipulate that variable however you want, or you could reassign it. So like if we did 3 times 5 and ran it, it'll just say happy 15th birthday no matter what we put in, right? Because we just set age to 3 times 5. And once you've manipulated that variable, you can output it by printing it using normal Java print statements, which is system.out.println. All right, that's variables in Scratch and Java. See you next time.